Tis.
Bobby, vamos. எதுல இருக்கிறீங்க Bobby? தொடங்கட்டா? ஓகே ஓகே. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the organizing committee, it's our pleasure to welcome you all to the inaugural session of the second International Conference on Decolonizing English, ICDE 2026, organized by the Department of English Language Teaching, Faculty of Arts, University of Jaffna, in collaboration with our distinguished even Pew Professor Suresh Kanagaraja, the patron of the conference. Building on the conversations and reflections that began last year, we gather once again around the theme that continues to aspire critical reflection: decolonizing English. Its significance extends far beyond the boundaries, as reflected in the participation of scholars and academics from across the globe.
The next 3 days offer us a space to exchange ideas, encounter diverse perspectives, and engage in meaningful academic dialogue through keynote and plenary addresses, spotlight and technical sessions, and dynamic panel discussions. More importantly, they invite us to consider new ways of understanding English, its identities and possibilities. Let us therefore enter these conversations with openness and curiosity, ready not only to listen and learn, but also to question, reflect, and contribute.
With that introduction, let us begin our inaugural session with the lighting of the traditional oil lamp. May I now have the honor of inviting the following dignitaries to light the traditional oil lamp. Senior Professor T.V.L. Nambi, the Conference Chair and the Vice Chancellor of the University of Jaffna. Okay. Former Vice Chancellor. Professor N. Pradeepa Raja, the co-chair and the Dean of the Faculty of Arts. Professor Suresh Kanagaraja, the patron of the conference. Professor T. Karunakaran, the co-chair and head of the Department of English Language Teaching. Our former Vice Chancellor, Professor Shanmugalingam. Former head. Our former Vice Chancellor, Professor Sri Satgunaraja. Dr. K. Shanmuganathan, the former head of the department. Professor Bimali Indraratna, General Sir John Kothalawa Defence University, our plenary speaker. Our former Vice Chancellor, Professor Vasanthi Arasratna. Professor Max Potty, Tilburg University, the Netherlands, another plenary speaker. Dr. Vaideki. Okay. Mr. V. Kandeepan. Okay. Mr. V. Parandaman, the convener of the conference. Editor. Ms. Sivagauri Rajashantan, the editor of the conference. Ms. Riofila Lakshan, the secretary of the conference. Professor Kandaya Sri Ganeshan. And one of the presenters. Thank you all. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now request you to join us to observe a moment of silent prayer. Thank you. Please be seated.
It is our pleasure to welcome you with a vibrant dance performed by our ELT undergraduates.
जनुताम तरितन जनुताम तरितन जनुताम तदिता जमतानम तदिगिणतुम तदीम तदिगिणतुम तदीम तदिगिणतुम तदीम दीम तरितन जनुताम तरितन जनुताम तरितन जनुताम तदिता जमतानम तदिगिणतुम तदीम तदिगिणतुम तदीम तदिगिणतुम நீலம் கொள் மேகத்தின் மயில் மீது நீ வந்த வாழ்வை கண்டதனாலே நீலம் கொள் மேகத்தின் மயில் மீது நீ வந்த வாழ்வை கண்டதனாலே நீலம் கொள் மேகத்தின் மயில் மீது நீ வந்த வாழ்வை கண்டதனாலே மால் கொண்ட பேதை மனம் நாரும் மார்த்தங்கு தாரை தந்தருள்வாயே மால் கொண்ட பேதை மனம் நாரும் மார்த்தங்கு தாரை தந்தருள்வாயே நான் என்று மார்த்தட்டும் பெருமாளே பெருமாளே பெருமாளே
Thank you for your beautiful performance, Ms. Sharwani Pradhaban, Ms. Madhusha Yogarasa, Ms. Kajalakshi Prabhaharan, Ms. Ambike Shanmugalingam, and Ms. Karthika Sundarlingam. May I have the honor to invite our dignitaries to take their seats on the stage. Honorable Vice Chancellor, the co-chairs, the Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Head of the Department, the patron and keynote speaker, Professor Suresh Kanagaraja, the convener, the editor-in-chief of the proceedings, and the secretary.
May I now invite our senior lecturer and the convener of the conference, V. Parandaman, to deliver the welcome address.
Our respected Vice Chancellor and the Conference Chair, Senior Professor Tirunavakrasa Velnambi, our Dean of Faculty of Arts and the Co-Chair of the Conference, Professor Pradeep Raja, Head of Department of English Language Teaching and the Co-Chair, Professor T. Karnagaran, our respected collaborator, mentor, and the patron, and the brain of ICDE, Professor Suresh Kanagaraja, Pennsylvania State University, USA, keynote and plenary speakers, presenters dealing with their abstracts, former vice chancellors, respected council members, registrar of University of Jaffna, bursar of University of Jaffna, deputy registrar of Faculty of Arts, deans of other faculties, former heads of Department of English Language Teaching, heads representing various departments, professors, senior lecturers, teachers, and our students of various disciplines. Good morning, everyone. I am really delighted to welcome all of you to our second international conference on Decolonizing English 2026, organized and conducted by the Department of English Language Teaching of University of Jaffna in collaboration with the University of Pennsylvania, USA. This conference was first launched and introduced by our respected Professor Suresh Kanagaraja last year, along with some eminent and internationally popular academics and researchers who have been keenly working and exploring in the field of English language teaching, connecting it with socio-eco-cultural linguistics and applied linguistics globally as well as domestically. Maintaining the same spirit of what we had last year, this year opens with some new hopes and innovations through some prominent and well-recognized global and national academics related to the fields mentioned earlier. Decolonizing English is a vibrant and universal theme, touching the horizons of the international skies, where this global act is purposefully utilized by the speech communities, whether globally or domestically determined. Reaching a desirable global actal competence, encompassing all the communicative and intelligible skills, is the utmost target of any kind of ELT activity directed and navigated by the professionals. The sub-themes derived from this macro theme are mainly reflecting the current nature of ELT and how, as researchers, we can unfreeze these tendencies to smoothen the teaching, learning, and assessment processes. For this international conference, we have received more than 148 abstracts, almost reflecting the sub-themes, which can be condensed to three major perspectives. First one, world Englishes, their dialectal network, and their spreading status, policies, planning, and recognition. Second one, pedagogical transformations, flexibilities on various socio, psycho, neurocognitive, linguistic realities, and the theoretical backgrounds, their feasibility and innovations for future advancements. Third one, L2 learners' amphibian roles while being given access to multiple domains in the academic life, which demands a kind of tolerable global lectural competence, accessing to various specific, general, and academic skills in English. As organizers, along with our collaborators and the patron, we are really pleased to see much research revelations encapsulated in the abstracts to be presented here. On behalf of the DELT and the collaborators, we would like to congratulate all the presenters dealing with these constructs. DELT is also very proud and enthusiastic to welcome the keynote speakers, plenary speakers, and the participants of the spotlight sessions. We are going to have some useful and pragmatic discussions during these sessions, which would eventually enhance the current status of ELT in Sri Lanka. On the whole, the actions taken by the secretary, editor, and the editorial team, reviewers, members of the action committee, and our young academics have to be praised for their hard and tireless work and contributions for making this ICDE successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for those warm words of welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, now we move to a significant moment of the event, the launching of the conference proceedings. The proceedings will be launched by our keynote speaker, Professor Suresh Kanagaraja. Thank you. I now have the honor of inviting our conference chair, Senior Professor T.V.L. Nampi, Vice Chancellor, University of Jaffna, to address the gathering. And we sincerely thank him for his presence in spite of his busy schedule.
The co-chairs of the conference, Professor N. Pradiparaja, the Dean of the Faculty of Arts, and Professor T. Karunakaran, the head EL DELT, the convener and V. Parandaman, and also our keynote speaker, Professor Suresh Kanagaraja, Pennsylvania State University, USA, and also our former staff members of the English Language Teaching Department, and the Bimali Indraratna, the Kotalavala Defense University, Sri Lanka, and Professor Max Potti, the Tilburg University, the Netherlands, and also the coordinator for this conference, our former Vice Chancellors, the Professor Sri Sarkunaraja, and Professor N. Sanmolingam and Professor Vasanthi Arasaratnam and all other dignitaries on the desk and off the desk, staff members, students and all the participants. So good morning to you all. I am very pleased to be here on this 12th International Conference on Decolonizing English. Because you know that this is one of the most important conference not only in Sri Lanka but also in the South Asia, because most of the participants from the different countries are paying their attention on this conference. So in that way, first of all, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation and the thanks for the organizers and all those who have been highly involving with this organization, and also for their tireless effort the day and night for the success of this conference. So the conference, the theme on decolonizing English, so that is highly significant because it creates critical space to examine how English has been shaped by the colonized histories and how it can be reimagined as more inclusive, diverse and locally meaningful language. Maybe you know that in the world there may be the number of languages, because the English is considered as a common languages in almost all over the world. So then when we have a fair knowledge in English, actually we can grow academically. Even for the research and innovative activities, for that also we need to apply the English language skill. That is the reason actually in the world we are giving the most importance to the English language. So in that way, organizing a conference on the theme, the decolonizing English, is also significant for this conference theme. So when we think about that, maybe the several conferences are organized by the university, maybe by the university and also by other each faculties and the department. So this is separately a significant conference. Because this conference has the several importances in our personal life and also the career life. For example, you know that this leads to that the challenging that the colonial legacies. The conference encourages the critical reflection on the historical relationship between the English and the colonialism. And the second one, you know that this recognizes the diverse varieties of English, but maybe nowadays the English is considered as a communicative tool. So then it gives the legitimacy to the world Englishes. It may be including the Sri Lankan English and Indian English or African. Maybe that is rather than treating the British or American English as only the standards. So then this recognize the diverse varieties of the English, and also decolonizing English allows communicators to use the English while preserving their own languages, cultural traditions, values and identities. And next, this conference can explore the teaching approaches that recognize the students, maybe the multilingual backgrounds, and reduce the idea that one particular variety of English represent that concentrates on the superiority. So in several ways we can consider this conference is very much important. And also I am particularly pleasant that this conference is organized in a collaborations with the Peninsula State University USA, maybe with the contribution from our Suresh Kanagaraja. We are very fortunate and proud to have him to this conference, because as he was one of our eminent staff members in the university. So then the bringing together distinguished scholars from Sri Lanka and around the world, the participation of the keynote and the plenary speakers from the United Kingdom and the United States, Australia, Netherlands, and Sri Lanka, together with a panel discussion. That is the spotlight presentation and 89 research paper presentation reflects the growing international recognition of this conference as a forum for academic exchange. As you all know, nowadays, if we organize number of conferences at the university or faculty level, it is very difficult for us to collect the research papers. Even if we receive some papers, it is very difficult to, that the scrutinization and finally the realization of the papers is very much difficulty for us. But as compared to these challenges, actually, this team, they don't face these kind of challenges because they were able to obtain the 89 papers that will be presented in the conference. The University of Jaffna remains committed to the fostering the research, innovation, and the global academic partnership. This conference, such as ICDE, strengthen our vision of creating the knowledge that is locally grounded while being internationally connected. So I hope this discussion and the collaborations initiated here will contribute significantly to the achievement of English language teaching and the related disciplines. Maybe the participation from the student side also in this conference definitely will encourage them to involve more in that learning activities and also some kind of research works. So that I congratulate the Department of English Language Teaching and the entire organizing committee for their dedication in organizing this important and successful event. So I also extend my appreciation to the keynote speakers, presenters, reviewers, collaborators, and participants for their valuable contribution. So finally, I wish the second International Conference on Decolonizing English every success and trust that all participants will find the conference intellectually enriching, professionally rewarding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your insightful address. May I respectfully invite our co-chair and the Dean, Professor N. Pradibaraja, to address the gathering.
Our conference chair, Vice Chancellor, Senior Professor T. Velnambi, our conference co-chair, Professor T. Karunakaran, Head of the Department of ELT, our former Vice Chancellors, our keynote speakers, Deans of the faculties, Senior Professors, and lecturers, and the presenters. Good morning, all of you. It's my immense honor to welcome you all to the second International Conference on Decolonizing English 2026. This conference holds profound significance in our ongoing journey to rethink, reshape, and redefine the role of English in a post-colonial world. In an era marked by the globalization and the cultural exchange, the decolonization of English is not just an academic pursuit, but a vital step toward fostering inclusive, equitable, and diverse linguistic landscapes. This conference provides a crucial platform to challenge dominant narratives, question colonial legacies, and explore how English can be embedded as a tool for empowerment rather than the imperialism. It aims to promote critical dialogues that can influence pedagogical practices, policy formulations, and scholarly research those contributing to a more just a decolonization understanding of language and literature. At such esteemed gathering, we must delve into a range of compelling topics. Discussion should include decolonizing curricula, incorporating indigenous and marginalized voices, reimagining English language teaching methodologies, and examining the power dynamics embedded within linguistic hierarchies. We should also consider the socio-cultural implications of English in post-colonial societies, explore innovative pedagogies that respect local contexts, and examine the role of technology and media in shaping decolonial narratives. These conversations are vital for the fostering inclusive scholarship and transformative educations. We are privileged to have the intellectual contributions of Professor Suresh Kanagaraja as a backbone of this conference. His pioneering work on translingual practices, linguistics justice, and the decolonization of the language education has profoundly influenced contemporary scholarship. Professor Kanagaraja's insights challenge us to rethink monolithic notions of the language proficiency and advocate for the multilingual context sensitive pedagogies that empowered learners and educators alike. His presence and work inspire us to pursue the decolonial pathway with the rigor and compassion. It's my pleasure to extend a warm welcome to the distinguished keynote speakers whose expertise and visionary perspectives will undoubtedly enrich our discussions. Their contributions will shed light on diverse facets of decolonizing English, inspiring innovative ideas and collaborative efforts towards meaningful change. Organizing conference efforts invaluable benefits for the Faculty of Arts and the Department of English Language Teaching. It provides an opportunity to strengthen academic network, foster interdisciplinary research, and enhance pedagogical practices. Moreover, it is positions our institutions as a leader of the decolonial scholarship, attracting scholars, students, and policymakers committed to social justice and linguistic equity. Ultimately, it cultivates an academic environment that values diversity, critical inquiry, and the transformative educations. In conclusion, I encourage all of us to engage actively, think critically, and collaborate personally. Together we can contribute to a decolonized, inclusive, and vibrant future for the English language education worldwide. I would like to sincerely thank the organizing committee for their dedication and hard work in bringing together this wonderful conference. Your efforts have created a valuable platform for the meaningful dialogue and collaborations. We truly appreciate your commitment to advancing the cause of decolonizing English and enriching our academic community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your inspiring talk. Now I call upon Professor T. Karunagaran, another co-chair and head of the department, to deliver the co-chair's address.
Respected Vice Chancellor, University of Jaffna, the keynote speaker, Professor Suresh Kanagaraja from Pennsylvania University, State University, USA, the plenary speaker, Max Potty from Netherlands, and the other plenary speaker, Professor Bimali Indraratna from Kotrabale Defence University, Sri Lanka, Rhonda Oliver, Curtin University, Australia, Vaidehi Rajapillai, University of Britain, Professor Senda Dovchin, Curtin University of Australia. The co-chair, Professor Pradibaraja, the convener, Mr. V. Parandaman, the editor, Mrs. Sivagauri Rajashandan, and Secretary Mrs. Riofula Lakshan, former Vice Chancellor Professor Shanmolingan, Professor Vasanthi Arasaratnam, and Professor Sri Satgunaraja, the deans of the faculties, head of the departments, senior professors, senior lecturers, students, paper presenters, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning all. So first of all, I would like to welcome you all for the second international conference on decolonizing English. So it is a great privilege for us to welcome on behalf of Department of English Language Teaching. So the first conference was organized under the leadership of Professor, former Vice Chancellor, Professor Sri Satgunaraja. I would like to, record my deep sense of gratitude for him to support us in all the ways possible in the first, during the first international conference. Secondly, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Professor Suresh Kanagaraja. Without his support and encouragement, this is not possible. He is a great scholar, and if you check the Google Scholar, he has crossed 35,000 citations. It is not possible unless one is so dedicated and committed to research. We can't imagine to get closer to his, in our lifetime, his number of citations. So he has fans all over the world. And that's why he easily arranges, he is able to arrange these plenary speakers, keynote speakers within a short time. So because he has connections. So this conference, when he came up with an idea of conducting an international conference, we grabbed the opportunity. So we are fortunate. He was ready to. He was willing to host this first international, even the second, third in the University of Jaffna. So this is, he has been the guiding force behind this international conference on decolonizing English. When we look at when I consider his support, he reviewed. He went through all our abstracts and the keynote speeches, and he gave us feedback as and when it is necessary. So under his guidance, our staff members and the team, editorial team, worked hard, and they have this first international conference was a great success. I believe this would be also a great success at the end of this conference. So when I look at this the title Decolonizing English, I remember two persons. One is Robert Philipson. He wrote a book on linguistic imperialism in 1992, which was published by Oxford Press. And later his arguments were countered by our Professor Suresh Kanagaraja. He authored another book in 2002, which in the name of Resisting Linguistic Imperialism. So, the Philipson talks about a top-down structuralist model in his book, Linguistic Imperialism, that he says the center nations like UK and USA, they just exploit the periphery nations like Sri Lanka, India, and other small countries. And there is a deliberate spread of English at the expense of mother tongues like Tamil, Sinhala, Hindi, and so on. But whereas Professor Suresh Kanagara argues in his book, Resisting Linguistic Imperialism, he adapts a bottom-up approach that we have to consider the everyday classroom, where the teaching and learning takes place, and there should be a negotiation between the teacher and the learners, and also he insists on one point, that we shouldn't give up these dominant varieties like American English or British English. We should consider how we can make use of them to progress for our political emancipation and the economic growth, or even for the higher educational opportunities. So he argues that the local communities adapt and mix with the local languages, and while they are learning English. And he also says when we learn English, it shouldn't happen at the expense of mother tongues. So he says the English language learning should take place within these cultural and linguistic identities. So that I think the title, maybe I relate this title to his book, The Resisting Linguistic Imperialism. So that he published this book in 2002. Still it has a great demand because he has written many aspects in like multilingualism, code switching, and then he discusses something about translingual practices, and then the hybrid use. I mean, in Sri Lanka, in the post-colonial context, we use this Sri Lankan English, which is also accepted as standard Sri Lankan English. And that standard Sri Lankan English has this hybrid use of English, and we have borrowings from other, from our the language and mother tongues like Sinhala, Tamil. Not only from our mother tongue, we borrow words from Hindi, Urdu, and so on. So it is a hybrid. Our Sri Lankan English is a hybrid one. So that's why I think that when we discussed, along with Professor Suresh Kanaraja about the topic, he only suggested this topic would be the correct one. I think it is very apt, and we will continue the third and fourth international conferences on the same topic. So I also would like to take this opportunity to thank the present Vice Chancellor, Professor Vel Nampi, and our Dean, Professor N. Pradeep Raja, for giving us all the support to conduct this second international conference successfully. And I also take this opportunity to thank the former head, Dr. Shanmunathan, and under his leadership, the first international conference was held. And he also extended enormous support even to the second. I took up this, I took charge a couple of weeks ago. Until then, he was the one who supported our team. So I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Shanmunathan. And also we have our former head, Dr. Shivaji, Mrs. Shivaji. He also headed the department for 5 years, and she also rendered her fullest support even after the retirement. So I also record a deep sense of gratitude for her support. So finally, I would like to wish you good luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your encouraging remarks. Now I invite Ms. Sivagauri Rajashantan, Editor-in-Chief of the proceedings, to address the gathering.
Very good morning to you all. It's with great pride I welcome you all to the second edition of the International Conference on Decolonizing English, once again hosted by the Department of English Language Teaching, Faculty of Arts, University of Jaffna. What began last year as an inaugural gathering has continued to draw scholars committed to rethinking the place of English in post-colonial, multilingual, and global South contexts. This year's conference builds on the foundation laid in 2025, carrying forward its central concern with decolonizing English while widening the conversation to language pedagogy. Across the sessions, delegates have engaged with questions of linguistic justice, the politics of English education in Asia, and the evolving realities of teaching and researching English in bilingual, multilingual classrooms. The breadth of submissions this year is a testament to how urgently these questions continue to matter to our field. We are encouraged to report that the conference received 149 abstracts this year, reflecting the growing reach and reputation of International Conference on Decolonizing English within the international ELT and applied linguistics community. Each submission underwent a rigorous blind peer review process by subject specialists, and 109 abstracts were accepted for inclusion in the conference proceedings organized under 9 thematic tracks. We remain deeply grateful to our keynote speakers, plenary speakers, especially Professor Suresh Kanaharaja from Pennsylvania State University, USA, Professor Sender Dovchin from Curtin University, Australia, Professor Bimali Indraratne from Sir John Kothalawa Defence University, Sri Lanka, Professor Rhonda Oliver, Curtin University, Australia, and Professor Max Potty, Tilburg University, the Netherlands, and Dr. Vaidegi Rajapillai from University of Brighton, United Kingdom, whose insightful presentations once again will challenge and expand our understanding of English, power, pedagogy, inspiring meaningful dialogue and critical reflection throughout the conference. Our thanks also go to our Vice Chancellor, Senior Professor Velnambi, and Dean Professor Pradeep Raj for their continued support in making this conference possible for a second consecutive year. To our authors, reviewers, session chairs, delegates, and the dedicated staff and students of DELT, thank you for sustaining the spirit of International Conference on Decolonizing English into its second year. As a chief editor, I am honored to present the proceedings of ICDE into your hands, and I look forward to the conversations this volume will continue to inspire. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam, for your speech about the background story of the conference. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for the keynote address. To introduce our keynote speaker, Professor Suresh Kanagaraja, I would like to call upon Professor Kandaya Sriganeshan.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to introduce our distinguished keynote speaker, Professor Suresh Kanagaraja. Professor Kanagaraja is an UNPU University professor, the highest distinction Penn State bestows on its faculty members, with joint appointments in the departments of applied linguistics, English, and Asian studies at the Pennsylvania State University. He is by any measure one of the most influential scholars working in our field today, claiming a place among the top 10 most cited scholars in linguistics worldwide, according to Stanford's Global Citations Report. His scholarship has fundamentally reshaped our perception of language, power, and pedagogy across a remarkable body of work spanning more than 2 decades. He has challenged the field to move beyond monolingual, native speaker-centered models of English language teaching to recognize the creativity, agency, and legitimacy of multilingual speakers and writers worldwide. His key works include Resisting Linguistic Imperialism in English Teaching, Geopolitics of Academic Writing, and Translingual Practice, Global Englishes and Cosmopolitan Relations. They have won top honors from the Modern Language Association, the American Association of Applied Linguistics, and the British Association for Applied Linguistics. His most recent work, Language Incompetence, Learning to Communicate Through Cancer, Disability, and Anomalous Embodiment, published in 2022, extends his critical humanistic approach into a new territory, examining communication itself through the lens of disability and embodiment. Professor Kanaraja's leadership in the field has been equally distinguished. He served as editor of TESOL Quarterly, the flagship journal of teachers of English to speakers of other languages from 2005 to 2010, and was elected president of American Association of Applied Linguistics from 2011 to 2012. In 2016, TESOL International named him one of the top 50 scholars who have shaped the field of TESOL as part of its 50th anniversary. He has held distinguished visiting professorships at some of the world's leading universities, including the University of London, Monash University, the University of New South Wales, and the University of Bristol. He has also been invited to speak and teach on numerous topics. What makes Professor Kanaraja's presence with us today especially meaningful is his own scholarly grounding in the global south. Early in his career, he undertook a critical ethnography of a Sri Lankan ESOL classroom, actually the classroom from the University of Jaffna, a work that has since become foundational in critical language pedagogy, speaking directly to the post-colonial, post-conflict realities many of us in Jaffna experience in our own teaching and research. Over the years, he has mentored nearly 24 doctoral students who now hold faculty and research positions at universities worldwide, from Boston University to Osaka University. It is a testament not only to his scholarship, but also to his generosity as a mentor and teacher. It is a genuine privilege to welcome someone whose work has shaped the very foundations of critical decolonial approaches to English language teaching, and whose intellectual journey began in many ways with questions similar to the ones we continue to ask here today. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Suresh Kanaraja.
full mode வந்து இதுல presentation இங்க போங்க ரைட் அதுல போங்க ரைட் எக்ஸிட் அங்க full mode இல்ல انا எனக்கு இதுலயே full mode அதுல வந்து தான் வேற ஒண்ணு மன்னிக்கிறேன் ட்ரை பண்ணி ஓவனே அடிச்சு பாருங்க இப்போ வந்துட்டு Okay, we welcome you to Jaffna. Thanks for all the effort you have taken to come here. We guarantee you a very provocative, inspiring, motivating conference with wonderful speakers you have invited. We usually highlight the international guests we invite for this conference. But today you're going to have your local colleagues, Professor Bimali Indraratna and myself, taking the center stage. That's because our international scholars have had a lot of difficulty getting here because of the war in Iran. So the two scholars from Australia arrived just this morning. The scholar from UK will arrive this afternoon at Katunayaka and proceed directly to Jaffna. And Professor Max Spotty has arrived last evening, but he undertook a very complicated route to get here. He had to cancel his earlier reservation because of the war, and he has arrived. So we wanted them to rest for today and speak from tomorrow onwards. So don't disappear. It's your local colleagues speaking for the opening day. But from tomorrow onwards, you will have the guests you have always heard of, read about, and probably want to hear from. So I'm going to talk about the theme of the conference, which is also very controversial and intriguing. The history of the theme is that, as Professor Karunaharan, the head, referred to this in a few minutes ago, I said I'll find the funds and also invite the speakers. You guys do the local organizing. And they came up with the theme, Decolonizing English. And I thought, that's a very catchy theme. It'll attract a lot of attention. But almost immediately, there were questions about what does this theme mean? So I remember the last year when we publicized the first conference on social media, there was a gentleman in the South, judging from the name and the location on Facebook, who asked just one question, which actually made me sit back and think about this. He asked, when we announced this conference is about decolonizing English, he asked, and what does it really mean? So I had, it's a wonderful question. I had visions in my head about someone thinking, it's an impossibility. Or if you decolonize English, there is no English. English is fundamentally a colonizing imperialist tool. It's almost like saying in Sri Lanka, we are going to serve you vegetarian mutton rolls today. Our international scholars may want to take a bite at that delicacy we have here, mutton rolls. Mutton roll is by definition, should have mutton. So probably the gentleman thought, you can't decolonize English because then it's not English, it's something else. It's almost the same that the African-American scholar Audre Lorde said one time, that you can't dismantle the master's house with the master's tools. And that's probably what made this famous writer from Kenya, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, write in 1990 in his famous book, Decolonizing the Mind. That was the last book he's going to write in English. Because to resist in English is not to resist it at all. It's actually promoting English even as people continue to use it, even for resistance. But Ngugi has changed his mind, or maybe he meant something different, because he has started writing in English. So a few years ago, I had the honor of inviting him to Penn State for a talk, and I interviewed him also on record for a publication in the future. And I asked him, did your mission fail? Because in 1990, you said that was the last book you're going to write. So he said, no, what I actually want is for English to share the same language status or language ecology of other languages. So he used African philosophical metaphor. He called it the onion concept of languages. That is, they are like layers on one after the other. They are one, but they are part of a layer. And so long as English can be part of that, it's almost like a rhizome. All the languages fit in different places in your communication. They're all part of one repertoire. And he said, that's what I mean now, or did mean, and I'm using English because it's part of all the languages that are part of my repertoire. But that allows us to think of, unpack this metaphor a little more. What is dismantling the master's house with the master's tool. So one of the first questions that comes is, what is the tool that Audre Lorde mentions? Probably you think the tool is English, which is used to dismantle the power of English. It's one of the common sense interpretations. But tools are not always the same everywhere. They get adapted for different purposes. So what you have as axe or hoe in other parts of the world is mammoty in Jaffna. So mammoty is more economic. It probably serves our own functions. Oxford University Press says mammoty is etymologically traced to the Tamil language. It's in English, but it's from Tamil language. It's made up of two Tamil words, man, soil, vatti, cut. So what you can see is it's our own adaptation of a tool people from other parts of the world use differently with different names for different purposes. So from that point of view, English is not the same everywhere. Of course, I'm referring to the possibility of treating Sri Lankan English, Indian English, or even regionally within Sri Lanka about different ethnic varieties of English or different regional Englishes. It's highly diverse. So are they the same tools that are part of Audre Lorde's reference? Or should we treat Sri Lankan English as a different tool for a different purpose? The second thing to think about this is when we talk about using English to resist colonization, we're not talking about English in the dictionary or grammar handbook, because language in use is more than just the grammar or lexical items. Language in use is always about all those grammatical, lexical items coming embodied with ideologies, identities, historical and geographical histories. So the tool should include all those items, different ideologies, different identities, different historical and geographical backgrounds. Just the abstract language is not useful for anything. It's just abstract. It's in the dictionary. It's in the grammar books. So that if we include in the tool things like ideologies, identities, historical and geographical histories, then the tool becomes also diverse. We're not talking about the same thing. The second question is, what are we thinking of dismantling? So is it about using English to dismantle the power of English? But the power of English is sustained by a lot of different things. It's sustained by ideological structures, geopolitical structures, political agendas of different countries, other things like nationalism, imperialism. So you cannot dismantle English without also dismantling the structural, broader geopolitical infrastructure that is part of English. So those kinds of dismantling of ideologies, geopolitical structures, policies is a bigger kind of work that includes more than just language. So let me give you an illustration. If you say we don't want to use English anymore because we are very decolonial in our approach, we are going to use only Tamil or Sinhala here, but use Tamil or English with assumptions like language purity, language hierarchy, language ownership, language separation, ideas like only native speakers are owners of the language. There is one kind of Tamil or Sinhala that is superior. That's colonialist. It doesn't do anything to further the decolonizing project if you just remove English and use local languages with the ideologies that are colonial. It's a long story about why these ideologies like language ownership, language purity, language hierarchy are colonial. They started in 19th century with colonization. Our local ideologies and attitudes to languages are very, very different. So the third question we have is, how do we dismantle something? You can dismantle the master's house from outside through a bulldozer. We do it a lot here in Sri Lanka. But don't forget, the master has an army and a navy and a police force and the Supreme Court. So they can stop it. It's not guaranteed that you can dismantle the master's house by just bulldozing it from outside. The other approach is like the insects inside the house that eat at the foundations. In the United States, every couple of years, we are compelled to do an inspection of the house to see that there are no insects that are creating structural damage to the house. That one takes the master by surprise. It's a resistance from within. It's not a bulldozer outside. The police and the army may not see it for a long time. So it's a different kind of struggle. I appreciate scholars who are trying to dismantle the language from outside, like Audre Lorde and Ngugi, who said, we are going to oppose the use of English because you can't resist English with English, and therefore it's a struggle based on policy work, writing work, ideological work. But another kind of struggle is in our hands as English language teachers, which is, what do we do with the English language we are teaching every day? Can we do something to the language we teach so that it is taught with different ideologies, assumptions, identities, which can resist the colonial power of English? With that in mind, I want to say that before I go to this slide, there is a lot to dismantle in order to decolonize English. As I just mentioned, decolonizing English is not just about the words in the grammar book and the dictionary. It's also about the texts that accompany English. It's also about genres of writing, communicating. It's also about interactional strategies. The way we use English in so many diverse ways are part of the colonization of English. So I want to focus, so it's hard to address all areas of the uses of English. It also includes curriculum, pedagogy, teacher development, testing, a lot of areas. So I'm going to focus only on publishing, academic publishing. A lot of people feel that academic publishing is controlled by journals, it's copy edited, therefore it doesn't allow for any diversity. Because some people might call it a very censored kind of activity. There's a way to control what goes in and what's kept out. But there's other reasons why publishing is important. Professor John Swales, who has written a lot about academic genres, in one of his publications calls refereed research journals and research publishing as the gold standard for knowledge construction. And what he means by this is this: you can do any research you want, but unless you get it published in a refereed journal, it's not knowledge. It can be local knowledge, it can be folklore, it can be personal knowledge, but it's not academic knowledge. I know it's unfair, but it's true, because at least for the universities in the mainstream, even publishing in a book is not academic knowledge, because it's a long story, but it's possible to publish a paper that has been published in an article later in a book, but it's not possible to publish something that's already been published in a book in a research article, because the research article is new knowledge, current knowledge, refereed knowledge. Books don't go through the same kind of refereeing process. So there's an inequality there. Refereed research articles are the key sites for knowledge production. So I'll focus on this. And also, I'm going to focus on this partly because in this conference, after the first 3 days, we are going to have a mentoring on publishing, where we have invited scholars to send any work in progress, and both the keynote speakers here, myself, We have read all the papers, and we are going to talk one-on-one with these authors to see what we can do to both bring their own voices and local knowledge, but also get into the main journals in our field. So before I begin, I've narrowed it down completely to just publishing, but I'm going to narrow it down further. It's very complicated. So I don't know if you have heard of this scientific movement started by people in physical sciences called wicked science. So this is just a graph. You can look at it. This, as you can see, it was published by two scholars. I think they're in the Ohio State University. I met some of them in a conference a few years back. And why this is interesting is, for us in the arts and humanities, it's easiest to say things are very complicated. But people in science, we know, don't talk like that. They say there's a clear answer. If you're objective, look things carefully, there is a way to proceed. We all know this division between the arts and sciences. Scientists are much, we call them positivistic. You know, they think of evidence as always available. You detach yourself, analyze it, you can know the root causes of something and the answers. But what a surprise, there are some scientists who feel answers are not simple. So I want to talk about all the features of this, just highlight a few. They say wicked problems all the way on the right side are multi-causal, multi-scalar, and interconnected. You know, there are different ranges of problem scale. It's a geographical term, very useful term now in a lot of our fields. Just like in a map, you would look at a small scale and you can see the university. You adopt a different scale. You don't see the university, you can see the whole of Sri Lanka. You can adopt even a further scale, you can see the world, but you can't see Sri Lanka, I'm sorry. So different scales illuminate different kinds of problems, and they say if you address it in one scale, it doesn't mean you tackled all the problems, because you change your scale, there are other issues to address. They say wicked problems straddle organizational disciplinary boundaries. So is publishing a language problem? A long time, for many years, people used to say, a lot of periphery scholars, people from South Asia, Africa, South America, don't get published because they don't know English language. But it's not that simple. You all know, we all know, that there are also economic problems. We don't have access to the leading journals. We don't have resources to compete with American scholars or European scholars the same way they engage in research and writing. So is it an economic problem? It's also a geopolitical problem. It's about all the publishing networks being located in the United States and Europe. There are very few academic publishing networks with that kind of status housed in a lot of southern global south countries. So this transcends disciplinary boundaries, and just to humble ourselves, one more, it says every wicked problem is connected to others. So I'll illustrate this with my own attempts in trying to publish from Sri Lanka in 1990. So I went on study leave from 85 to 90 to United States, and I returned on the day I was expected, 1st of June 1990, to start working here. And then I had a lot of dreams of continuing to publish. I was fresh from my PhD. And I had all the data. I brought my floppy disks those days and a computer. And I thought I'm going to write. But here are the problems that I experienced. So in one of the articles, one of the first articles in Tisal Quarterly, which was a response to the famous writing scholar Anne Reams, she did an article on the state of the art on writing research, where she made it appear that there are different approaches to writing. Critical writing is one more approach. So I just wanted to say, if you think of critical writing as one more approach, it'll change everything you have said so far. You know, you can't say critical or a political orientation. It's just one optional thing. You would agree. But the problem is this. I used words that were very common in my academic community here. We are very politically progressive. And I thought the West is also politically progressive. So I used words like academic industrial complex. the proletariat, stuff like that. And Reims only had a simple answer in her response. Look at the language of this scholar. He's a Marxist, and we all know Marxist is just old and unpopular. There is no, there is no news with Marxism. How would I know that the West had moved away from Marxism as a progressive field, a progressive ideology? Of course, they had moved on to postmodernism and identity politics and all that. And so that's an example of how being off-networked sometimes leaves you out even from the language. Okay, if it's a language problem, it's not a language problem of not knowing English. It's also a problem of not knowing the language associated with some of the current ideologies, academic fashions, academic conversations, and our manuscripts look kind of out of place, like we are talking an old dialect that's not used anymore. A second problem I had was, you won't believe this, articles written in British English, because we are a British colony, were sent back by American journals and editors as badly edited. Now look, what color is C-O-L-O-U-R? Who spells that? C-O-L-O-R. They couldn't imagine that there are other people. Of course, it's anonymous refereeing, so they didn't know this is from Sri Lanka or a British colony. But then you shouldn't assume that all writers are writing from USA. But that's an example of an academic publishing network which has closed academic centers. And by that, what I mean by that is, at that time, probably still, a lot of academic journals have editors, reviewers, copy editors who are all from the United States. So it's hard for them to sometimes imagine there are authors. It's changing a little bit, but that's another thing I experienced. Because you're off-networked, we had other problems. So teaching here in a teacher-led, form-focused way was very common. And I wanted to take another look at it. And I found that there were a lot of useful functions from that. There were a lot of benefits. Culturally, a lot of our students were used to it, for the teacher to run the show, so to speak. If the teachers, even in the United States, if the teachers had activities and stepped back, the students used to complain, the teacher is not ready for teaching today. She's just having games and having us play. This is not learning. They just want to have fun. So there were, along those lines, a lot of other benefits. But a lot of journals had moved away from grammar translation method. The latest fashion at that time was communicative language teaching. So they said, this is old news. We're not interested in that kind of methodology, teaching method anymore. So there are different geographical conversations. People in different countries are talking about different things that's relevant for them. But because the journals were situated in the global north, they couldn't tolerate or have a space for our conversations. The topics we were writing on, the positions we were taking, even on the same subject that was important for everybody, could also be different. So in Sri Lanka at that time, there was an ideology of Tamil only and Tamil, pure Tamil. But people were actually using English because people are bilingual, some of them, and they were sending messages to each other in a very subtle way about their identity and maybe meanings that they didn't want to understand, others to understand. So an article I sent to Language in Society, the social linguistic journal, was about more ideological and political approach to code switching. So code switching at that time was treated in a more, they would call it a correlationist way. This switch in this language means this, and when you switch this to another thing, another language, then it means that. But I said, it's more than that. There are some ideological implications when you switch. In a Tamil-only place, you use English. That's sending some messages about where you stand. But the editors wrote back, we have had about 3 books appear on this political orientation to code switching in the last 6 months. One of them is by the famous sociolinguist Monica Heller, who is still very popular today. My concern was, it'll take 10 years for my library to get those books. They know the books that appeared 6 months ago, but not me. So that's another example of how these conversations are closed, because they are having a different conversation and different topics based on the speed of publication. And we are slow, we are lagging behind. But that might be connected to also the monopolistic publishing industry. So publishing is becoming more and more centralized in one way. You might argue against that. There is also a lot more availability on the internet, for at least for some journals which are friendly to open access. But you might have heard that Elsevier, the big publishing company, is a huge monopoly. They are eating up all the journals, and they have a practice called bundling. And what they say is to libraries anywhere, if you want to buy one journal from us, buy all these 50 other journals which you don't need. They don't say the last part. And we can give you for this rate. But if you have this one journal, it's going to be very expensive. So they are forcing us. And you know what happens. Our library can't buy that. It's too much. So it's getting a lot more centralized among few publishers. And that might be related to a resource limitation. We don't have the money. That's a problem. But the money problem and resource problems are also relevant other ways to publishing. For example, we are asked to teach a lot in our universities, in a lot of global south universities. We are not given time to sit back and do some writing. So there is a time and space limitation for us on how to engage with writing. In the West, for young scholars, they give a lot of time off from teaching because they realize you need to publish for your promotion and tenure. So that's a problem of resources, an economic problem. The way our universities function can't allow us a lot of free time. They want us in the classrooms. All of these are leading to a local academic culture that's different. That's what I felt in 1990 in my first book that you had in the first slide, Geopolitics of Academic Writing. Academic culture is very oral. We have a lot of oral interactions. Seminars, presentations, panels, conferences. But global North, America, Europe, is a very literate American culture. They don't talk a lot, they write. Or they do talk, but they focus on writing. Can you see a difference? A literate culture values publication, hence publish or perish. We value talking because it's not very resource intensive. You don't need money for that. You can have a cup of tea and sit down and talk for 2 hours. I enjoyed it. It's a very vibrant academic culture. It's good. I would love to do that with tea and vada rather than sit alone in my office and write. But the more you do that, you're going to become less a specialist. Because in the conversations, we're talking about all kinds of things. We are very interdisciplinary. We're also public scholars. We engage with the public. But the literate community is very focused because they're focused so much on publishing and they're keeping up with the reading. So that's leading to, again, being off-networked. Can you see? The more we develop an oral culture and keep away from publishing, we are more separated from publishing. Can you see a vicious circle here? That is, one thing leads to another, and we are getting further and further away. Actually, this situation was so strong that when I talked to some of my colleagues in University of Jaffna at that time about publishing, they resisted my attempts to focus on publishing, because what they said is, we have a vibrant academic culture here. We have seminars, we talk, we are producing a lot of knowledge, we are very interdisciplinary. Why do we want to get into the publish or perish dilemma that Western scholars have? There's a good argument there, but there is also the problem that the more we keep away from publishing, the more we are teaching their books and journals. Can you see the problem? Because classes need materials, and our materials are usually from, so I can give you so many very ironic examples. I was talking to Professor Sivathambi one time, and he casually observed, the rising star on caste studies is Brian Pfaffenberger in Harvard. So you are the star. You experienced a class all the time. You've studied this here. You talk about this. You've written so much about it. So that scholar came on a 6-month study leave, studied it, but he has the access to write about it. Professor Sivanthambhi didn't have the access to always keep on writing about caste in sociological journals. He's a theater expert and literature expert. So eventually he himself is saying the cost scholar, leading expert is in Harvard, a white guy, right? So it's a real irony. We are not the experts in our own knowledge because we are kept away from publishing. We are probably teaching their materials to our students. But wicked science is not disappointing. Things are very complicated. That example would have also showed you a couple of other things. Sometimes we are our own problem in the sense that we resist change because we love a different kind of culture, don't want to engage with that. You also saw through the example, publishing is not just a writing problem or a language problem, it's an economic problem, it's an infrastructure problem, it's a geopolitical problem. So, but this is another image wicked scientists put out saying things we can do, and I want to just highlight a couple of them. One is be action-oriented and not afraid to make mistakes. So, about academic publishing and decolonization, people are writing and writing and publishing and publishing. But we're not doing a lot about it. So this is a good advice. Do something. Do something. So, and don't be afraid to make mistakes because you have to get started on doing something if you want to proceed. If you keep on publishing about decolonizing and the inequality about publishing, nothing is going to happen. I mean, that'll become another fashion. People will read it, enjoy the article, enjoy the book, and say goodbye. So start there. Another one below that is, though you're starting small with a small action, be sensitive to power differentials and dynamics. You can do that. That is, these are not disconnected. Focusing on something specific doesn't mean you are cut off from all the bigger problems that wicked science points to you. Another one I want to point out is have the stamina for long-term engagement and celebrate small wins. Change may not happen one day. Actually, the initial steps you take might open up new spaces for change. So that's why they say be prepared for a long-term engagement. Don't think this is there'll be a solution, an overnight solution to some of the problems we have. So I have started a couple of things, a couple of efforts with that in mind. So in addition to the two-day mentoring workshop we have here, I've started this as another annual mentorship workshop in Penn State University. There are actually two scholars here who have been there on the first occasion we had it 2 years ago, and with the same attitude. Send us your manuscripts. Let's see what we can do as editors. I invite some editors of leading journals, some leading scholars, and read those articles, see how can we push the field further. Of course, though we are starting small with the articles, we are keeping all the other things in mind. Reviewers, how are they going to read this? Copy editors, what are going to be the problems? The conversations that are going on, how do you enter into the conversation, even though you're coming from a different place with a different idea? And so it's not just one-to-one mentoring, but we have sessions on also the politics of publishing in a bigger scale. So I want to focus on this for this reason. Majority of you are teachers of English, and this is something in your hands. How do you teach writing? How do you mentor or help your colleagues in writing for publication? How do you advise them, give feedback as colleagues who are interested in helping your colleagues? So you may not have the money to call a big conference of all the publishers in the world, including Elsevier, to have a big negotiation on change your rules. So that's of course one way to go about it at the macro scale, at the big scale, policy scale. But this is something you do every day. You teach English, you teach writing, you advise students, you advise mentors. So I'm deliberately starting small with a very unpopular approach, but we should keep the decolonizing of academic publishing in English as a multifaceted challenge where a lot of people should be engaged in doing different things. But as teachers, this is something we can start on. But there are debates about this, so just to show you how people are talking about different approaches. And some people don't like this small approach of just dealing with text. So this is one of my good friends, Riko Kubota from Japan, a policy scholar, and this quotation doesn't do justice to the full argument in an essay, which is a really good essay. But what she says is, decolonizing work in anything, especially writing or language for a lot of language teachers, should start with a neoliberal academic culture that is the geopolitical, ideological setup right now. Because if you change writing, she says, it's like celebrating plurality and hybridity, different Englishes, different genres. The neoliberal academic culture can appropriate it and make this a fashion. Oh, diversity, novelty, clap, 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 goodbye. So there's a good warning there. But my concern is that this is not a one-sided game. They will do something, but we teachers and writers have to be aware of that and change our strategy so that we don't fall into the trap. What Rico says is, if you focus on the small things on the text, you are ignoring social problems or geopolitical problems. So that doesn't have to be the case. That shouldn't be the case. Even when you focus on the text, on the small things, you have to think about the bigger geopolitical structures. Reviewers, editors, publishing houses, guidelines. If you don't think about it, then Ryuko is correct. You are being like an ostrich in the sand. The second part of the statement, she says, you have to place increased attention to places where real problems exist and make our professional activities more socially meaningful and transformative. So I think the implication is classroom things, writing things, textual things are not real problems. So that also I would contest. So I say in the points I make below that statement, some of the assumptions in this statement that I don't fully agree. And it's a very fashionable ideological approach among scholars everywhere, that the structural is more important than the discursive. So this comes from the old Marxist assumption, the base is more important than the superstructure. You remember the base superstructure kind of thinking. It was very fashionable in 1990s in Jaffna. So the base is economics, material relations, infrastructure. It controls language, religion, culture, because money is more important. It shapes, the material life shapes the way we speak, think, etc. Comes from historical materialism, Karl Marx. It's still popular. But even in Marxism, I mean, more recent scholars have rethought that connection. It's too one-sided, too simple. So in decolonial work, there are scholars like Catherine Walsh, who talks about the decolonial cracks. And what she says is, even in the big infrastructural relations, geopolitical institutions, there are cracks. There are small spaces of contradiction, tension, inconsistency that people are using to resist. So she's a decolonial scholar all about the small and the local. Her latest book has a cover page about a big urban context. It's like a road that is asphalt, and from a small crack in the road, a flower is blooming. So the book is all about how indigenous communities value songs, folklore, stories, dances as political, as decolonial. So you can see, so this is related, this bias is also related to the idea that the macro determines the micro. It's another way to look at it. The big controls the small, and the big is what? Money, geopolitical structures, institutions, infrastructure, and the small, language, songs, religion, anything local. Your classroom, a lot of scholars in this tradition also look down on the classroom. Teachers, what are you doing? You're wasting your time, because look, there is a lot of powerful things above your head, and you are not able to address all those in the small things you do in your classroom. The third point I make is, Rico also makes it look at like, makes it appear like change is one directional. Address the big, the small will change. It's not that simple. Nancy Hornberger in UPenn did one of the early studies in Bolivia where the government, Spanish government, gave the Indian language Quechua more rights, but the Quechua community didn't want that. But they started asking questions as, how would it help us to learn Quechua when there are no jobs? How did it learn to learn language that we use at home, but it doesn't have any value outside. So it's an example of policy, overpacing, practice. So sometimes it's the case, you might have a policy that's not taken up by people. So in this case, you change the publishing conventions, but the writers don't know how to write outside standard English and objective, depersonalized essays, which they are used to. And also the last assumption is transformation is all or nothing. You know, change comes in a clear, one-sided way. So change is, political change is not a zero-sum game. Where one person wins and everybody is defeated, it's going to be ongoing. So yeah, the neoliberal culture will do something, but then you have to do something against that. The neoliberal academic culture will eat it up, and you know, it's happening all the time. But then you have to be alert and do something. So if you think change is once and for all, okay, you're going to be defeated, and you're going to be too innocent. So I'm going to talk a little more about one type of, I'm narrowing it down even further. What do we do with the assumption that academic publishing needs standard English? That we can't do anything else. We can't bring Tamil, Sinhala, or Sri Lankan English into our academic writing. It's a kind of almost orthodoxy in a lot of circles that there is one English that is needed for publishing. So here again, a lot of colleagues think differently. So one group, they call them the second language writing group. You know, they have a symposium, conference, second language journal. They've taken the position that if you get your students or colleagues to write in anything that differs from standard English, so these schools they refer to as translingual, talk about how language is more than just one language or the other, that there are a lot of communicative practices that go beyond languages. They say that's going to be a failure. Your writers are going to fail. They're not going to be published. Actually, in some of the articles, they say any teacher who teaches their students to use other varieties of English or to bring in their own languages for voice are reckless because you're making your students fail. So they take a strong position on that. So I'm going to show you soon that language is always changing. It's not static. And to think that what we call standard English or whatever is the norm now has been always there and never going to change is a kind of mistake. And I'll talk about it more. Another assumption on this, that values form, comes from Ryuko and a lot of others who work at the level of policy. And you know, in this article, Ryuko talks about how copy editors in journals sometimes might edit your diversity away. And does happen. But then it's also, I will show you, there are also clever uses of, the main thing is how strategic you are, how rhetorical you are, how the change looks very necessary. They win. There is also diversity in writing. So Pete Elbow is an American writing scholar. He has a different, more complex version of it. What he says is, I'll prepare my students to engage in diverse writing in the classroom, but not in the final draft, not for submission, because the field is not ready. I mean, the publishing is not ready. We have to engage in, all of them agree, we have to first engage at the policy level, make them accept diversity in English before we encourage our students and colleagues to use diverse English. So that can happen both ways. You can talk at the policy level, but also you can write differently to introduce different types of writing to the editors and reviewers. And if you have them published, that's going to open the space also. So the other position goes all the way to the other end. This is Kate Cadman. She teaches in Australia. She has taught with a lot of African scholars, taught a lot of them in the past. She says, who are we to tell, or who are the publishing companies to tell our African writers, this is the way you should write? You have the freedom to write any way you want. Keep writing. So this is 100% agency. Don't be concerned about the geopolitical structures or publishing houses and policies that value standard English. Do what you want. So here I side with the previous scholars and say, there is a norm right now, and we have to respect it. So I adopt this a very pragmatic position that I might say comes from sociolinguistics, and a lot of our presenters are also in sociolinguistics, and this is very intuitive, you will agree. All communicative contexts or activities have certain conventions, have certain norms. So for example, if I was to ask to deliver a eulogy for a colleague who has died in one of our local universities, I can't say, okay, I have voice, I'm creative, I'm going to go there and crack some profane jokes, right? Because that's not the context. There are certain expectations in a funeral on how to deliver an eulogy. So you can do different things. We all have different eulogies, but it has to be in the context of what is expected. So that I call a negotiation approach. And what I say is, so this is a difficult thing to talk about. It's like acknowledge the norms, but do some changes in a gradual and small ways to both be part of the conversation, part of the norms that are there, but also different. So why this has been difficult for a lot of teachers and also scholars to accept is they find it difficult to hold two things at the same time. It's a paradox. In the United States, they have a saying, can you chew gum and also walk? Can you do two things? It's just a saying to say, it doesn't have to be one or the other, you can. So can you accept that there are norms, but also change them? I know it's a paradox, so I'm going to give you a couple of illustrations to show it's very normal. It happens around us all the time. We do them all the time. It's nothing special. But first, I'll start with some writers who have done that. If you think standard English is the only thing that we should all be doing, all the way from 1938, one of the Indian novelists, Raja Rao, you may have read him or not, wrote a novel that was in Indian English. British was still there. And this is from his preface. He says, if an Indian writes from India, then it has to be in a different English. But he was very strategic. The whole novel is narrated by a grandmother to her, an elderly lady, to her village, about what Mahatma Gandhi was doing in India at that time. So can you understand the context which makes Indian English very natural? So that's the type of strategy I'm talking about. There are others I can show. Is a award-winning, Nobel Prize-winning poet, Derek Walcott. So here he's from Caribbean. He's thinking of his Indian friend. This poem is for his Indian friend. He calls him Sadhu of Kuwa. But he also uses Indian English. This is more for what Kashru calls the Indian musicality or South Asian musicality. When we talk Tamil or English, we have a particular tune to it. So if you look at the first sentence, when sunset, a brass gong vibrate through Kuwa, is then I see my soul swiftly unsheathed. Sunset is singular, so when sunset vibrates, but he doesn't say vibrates. And also third line, he should be saying, it is then I see my soul. But if you read loud, when he takes off these other extra words, it has a particular musicality. When sunset, a brass gong vibrate through Kuwa, is then I see my soul swiftly unsheathed. So he's doing this in a lot of places. You might say it's ungrammatical English, but he's doing something else. He's trying to evoke the voice of an Indian person. By the way, a lot of us laugh at this kind of use of local English, and it has been used a lot for satire, but this is a tragic poem. At the end of the poem, this character almost self-immolates himself because being away from India is too much for him. So in this poem, initially he's taking a trip imaginatively to India every evening. He goes there and his spirit travels to India, but in the end it's too much for him. Can you see Indian English or ungrammatical English for tragic poem? Why it's unusual is people think that's laughable, but this poem is not laughable. This has been happening in Sri Lanka for a long time. This is just an ordinary short story you can buy in any local bookstore for $1 and just one page. But what you see here is a story that is in Tamil, but with a lot of English words which are not literated or not translated. So what does this mean? This may not be read only by educated people, by a lot of people outside. They are shuttling between two languages when they read this text. And we've been doing this for a long time. Our readers are bilingual. By the way, even if you don't understand the English words, it's not necessary. Sometimes the context helps you to keep moving. How many of you understand a text you read 100%, every single word? If you focus on every single word, you don't understand the text. So it's not necessary. By the way, this tradition is very old. Around the 14th century, we had a writing practice in South Asia called Mani Pralava writing. It's a mix of Sanskrit and Tamil. I went to Noolaham, our documenting center in Jaffna a few days ago, and they showed me Ola leaves with a mix of Sanskrit and Tamil. And can you see, for religious texts, they mixed two languages. So it's an old practice of not sticking to only one norm or one language, but using multiple codes for your purposes. It's the last example in academic writing. It's a published essay by an African-American scholar, Jennifer Swinderman. In this essay, she doesn't use quotation marks or italics or anything, but if you look carefully at some of the expressions, they are African-American words or Black English words. As for example, the first one, she says a lot of her colleagues, this essay is about students write to their own language, and she was talking about how Black English should be given a place in writing and teaching of writing. But her problem is, am I practicing what I preach? I want language to change, language norms to change, but am I doing it? And she does it. So can you see the rhetorical context that gives a license for her to do this? You know, you would say if she's talking about language change, she has a right to do this. And so, and also these Black English items come only in a context where her colleagues are arguing with her that this is a foolish statement, that Black English should be used. So it's very natural. Her colleagues would have talked to her in Black English to make those points. So it looks very natural. So for example, the first criticism, a few simply said that CCC, which is an organization for writing, had lost their cotton picking minds. So it's completely an African-American statement. It is not standard English. Cotton picking comes from slaves who were used to pick cotton in the South, and cotton picking mind is slave mind. So it's an African-American statement. She uses it there. And initially, I didn't focus on the deviations. I had to read it like a language teacher, class teacher, third or fourth time to say, oh, this shouldn't be in the text. Can you see how clever this is? Because the context is so natural, we've all taken with it. So I'll give you an example of why this is not unnatural. Simple example. You drive through our streets here in Jaffna or Colombo, you have traffic lights. If you look at the red in each of these three lights, the red is very different in each. The third red looks a little lighter, whereas the first red looks a little sharp. The second yellow looks extremely luminous. The third green, there is some kind of multiple colors inside. Would you say as you drive through that this red is not really a red? This is not the red I saw before. I'm not stopping. Would you say for the yellow, this, or the yellow in the first one, this is more like an orange, so I can stop or I can go. You don't do that because it's not the variation of the color that matters, but the pattern, the structure. You know that this is a three-part structure. And I might say, even if you had white in the second, you might prepare yourself to go. It doesn't matter. So here are three implications for writing. One is no text or communicative act resembles the norm. Would you agree? This is even true for conversations. People in phonology use spectrographs. They record the voice of all speakers. If you take 4 native speakers and put their voice through spectrograph, their A or E or L won't be the same. It's a matter of scale. If you look very closely, our speech is very different. If you move up and say standard English, then everything looks the same. Can you see the problem of scale? If you look really closely, as in a spectrograph, a lot of differences stand out. So even in writing, the fact that there is standard English doesn't mean we all write the same way. There's a lot of diversity. If not, we won't be published. So how come we all say we are using standard English, but our text is different? Different style, different tone, different usage. The second takeaway is this. A variation on certain dimensions doesn't destroy the performances or the communicative activities conformity to the norm. So just using one word in a place doesn't really affect the text. Would you agree? Because you can judge the meaning of that one word from the context. Even better, that one word stands out because of that context. It's very special, right? So just having some variations doesn't destroy the whole. And ultimately, it's possible to chew gum and walk. It's possible to chew chewing gum and walk. And what it means here is diversity and norm can go together. This is the problem with a lot of scholars who are unable to see how you can respect the norm and also bring some difference. Here's another example to show change is happening all the time and we are still talking. Do you realize that? Language is changing as we speak. And still we speak, we still be intelligible. How is that possible to have two things once again at the same time? So this is an example from Zeno, a classical Greek scholar. He's a nuisance scholar who just played tricks with people's minds. So he said, is the arrow flying or standing still? I think as kids we might have played this. If you say it's standing in, if it's just flying, it's impossible because anything material has to occupy a space and time at every point. If not, it's like a airy-fairy thing above human control. So if you said it's stopping in a particular place for a nanosecond as it keeps moving, then you would say your thought that this arrow is moving is an illusion. It's actually stopping gradually, one at a place and moving. Of course, it's a paradox. It's occupying a space and time, but also moving. But he's just playing tricks with us. But it's true. The arrow is at one specific place at a time, but it's also moving towards the goal. So this is a good example for how language is always changing towards something. But the bigger problem is this. We don't see all the small changes. It's humanly impossible. So what we know is two ends. When something was not a norm, and now something is a norm. That's all we see. So for example, take a simple example. Way back they said you can't form verbs out of nouns like Xerox. Xerox is the name of a company, remember? And they said you can't say Xeroxing, Xeroxed. People were marked wrong. No, I don't know what you're doing here. That's not an acceptable usage. It's the name of a company. You can't say Xeroxing, Xerox. It's like saying I Sureshed the talk, right? Doesn't mean a lot now. It might mean something another day. So, but now we do publish and say Xeroxing and Xeroxed. How did that change? We know at one time it was not. Now it is possible. What happened in between? Someone tried, someone failed, someone succeeded, more people succeeded, language changed. So my question is this. Do you want to sit back and wait for change to happen? A lot of people didn't. Somebody tried. If not, we don't have change. Change doesn't happen like that. It doesn't fall from the sky. Somebody doesn't come tomorrow and say, okay, changed and changing are acceptable today. Tigers tried that in Sri Lanka, by the way, when I was living. They tried to purify Tamil with a lot of words. They said, it will come in the local newspaper. Hereafter, bakery will be called Veduppaham. Right? It's like pure Tamil. But I don't know, do you all use Veduppaham anymore? Maybe there are some signs somewhere, but it didn't catch on a lot. So it doesn't fall from the sky. We do it. We do language change. So the takeaways from here are norms are never stable, but they're only stabilized for now. Do you accept that? That is, these are the acceptable things for now, but it's changing. So norms are not permanent or primordial. Every text or act reshapes the norm. So it follows from the previous one. No one speaks the same way even in the present moment. So what that means is we are changing the norm. Do you see that? Gradual changes are happening as we speak because each person is using English slightly differently. Even things you might call ungrammatical can become grammatical tomorrow. That's the story of Xeroxing and Xerox and many, many more examples. And thirdly, tentative stages towards the norm are still meaningful and functional. That is, it might be, so think about Xeroxing. At one point, it might have been treated as ungrammatical by some people. But then, it gradually gained acceptance. And most of all, this is another problem. Have you seen a situation where things look ungrammatical, but you perfectly understand the meaning? All the time. It's a problem only for purists and language teachers. I'm sorry. We are all language teachers. We say, from the grammar book, this is wrong. We perfectly understand the meaning, but it's a matter of social uptake. So somebody, Bruce Horner, an American friend, he made a nice point. He said, error or mistake is social. And what he meant by that is, are people accepting something? Then it's not an error. Are people not accepting? Then it's an error. If people are accepting it, it's not an error. If people are not accepting, it's an error. It's completely in our hands. So it's a matter of how opinion changes. In sociolinguistics, we call it social uptake. That is, other people begin to understand it and then use it, then there's change. You can be the initiator of change if you want. Think about a new word. Okay, quick example of how I have tried to initiate some changes. I know we started late, and I hope I have a few more minutes to go. I should have stopped at 10:30, but I think I started 15 minutes late. So a couple of last slides I have to show I have been part of this change, but very gradual. And I might look like a loser from the very beginning. This is an article in a edited book, and I already told you edited book is easier to start. It's not a research journal. But it's a small place to start. This was written in 2002. It's more autobiographical. Two writing scholars, Dan Belcher and Ulla Connor, invited a lot of multilingual scholars to say, how do you write? We want to understand your experiences. So I told them, I want to write an essay without citations, more narrative, just like our oral academic culture in Jaffna. So I start with the story with my family, how my parents both speak English to hide things from me as a child, but gradually I begin to unpack them by just observing them and looking at the context. Nobody taught me when I was 5 years old before I went to school, but I gradually picked up how some of their words, it's a natural situation for all of us. But in the second paragraph, I move quickly to say how my writing is also working like that. Nobody taught me how to do creative writing about or violating norms, but I'm doing it gradually by experience. So what I'm doing here is this. I am violating the genre of academic writing with a personal voice and a story. It happens a lot now, but in 2002, it might have been not very common. But then I quickly learned to move on to the thesis statement. So, you know, in the American style of writing, you have to announce what you are doing right on the first paragraph. They want you to say, this is what I'm doing in this essay. But I postpone it. So it's a kind of you might say, a little bit of creativity and a deviation at the level of genre, not at the level of form yet. I'm not changing language. In the essay, I do talk about our tradition of avayadakam. We are you might translate it as silence in front of the court, or humility in front of the court or the assembly. You have to humble yourself. But I transliterate it and explain it. I wasn't ready to use Tamil script or to leave it at that without definition. I thought it's too early. This is an essay I wrote in 2006. Some scholars, Bruce Horner and John Trimber, wrote a policy essay in the same journal saying the idea of teaching writing in the United States monolingually, only in English, is a disservice to American students because the world is changing. It's becoming multilingual. Our students have to engage with multiple languages. Look at TikTok or Facebook. They are doing it on their own. Nobody teaches them. They're engaging with multiple languages. So I took up the opportunity and did the other work from the ground up. I analyzed the writing of Geneva Smitherman, I talked to you about earlier, all her writing, to see how does this African-American scholar use black English in her writing. Where she's doing what these scholars want to do at the policy level. In practice, she's doing a different kind of writing. But the problem for me was this. Should I write this in American English or Sri Lankan English? Because I have to practice what I preach. And I have to practice what Geneva Smitherman is promoting. So still, I know the academic culture is not ready in 2006 for a complete article in Sri Lankan English or Tamil, but I'm doing something like a negotiation. Use the format of standard English, but also insert some Sri Lankan English in between. So in the item that I have underlined and circled is the last sentence in the essay. I say, people will say, do you write like that? And I say, I don't, because I'm still learning. But then, do you know the ing form is very common in Sri Lankan English? Like we say, this mutton roll is smelling good, right? Or this roast is smelling good. So it's a stative verb, so you have to say the mutton roll smells good, the roast smells good. But the ing is much more rhetorical, persuasive, expressive. It's smelling good means it's really smelling very, very good. So I used a lot of ing here to show how I am learning things in a way to intensify it. The copy editor did think it was very unidiomatic to have all those INGs. I'll tell you what I did. But one more example, there was another space, it's not copied here, where I said, people will look at these small changes and won't think this is much. But I said, small changes make big, big differences. Do you know how we may use repetition as an intensifier? Like we would say, he smiled and smiled and smiled. Or we would say, if you want to emphasize this more, he smiled and smiled and smiled and smiled 5 times, right? In English, they would use only one adverb for that. He smiled a lot. Goodbye, right? So I used a medium there. So small, but the important thing is it's happening at a grammatical level, using the INGs and things. So I had to tell the reviewers understood what was going on from the rhetorical context. These guys are promoting diversity in English, so it's natural this guy will write like that. Sometimes I also flag the usage by saying, my people will respond like this if you criticize me for that. So this is how we would respond. Small changes make big, big differences. So they got the point. You know, there is a rhetorical work going on. But I had to write a letter to the copy at the copy editing stage. Please don't correct this, because there's a reason why I'm using it. Why I'm saying that is, you do have the structure imposing on you in the way things are set up, but you have to engage with them to try to explain what's going on. It's not easy. This is a final example. Now I have started using Tamil in Tamil script in my writing. So this is a book I published recently, where, for example, I use Ketrathu Kaimannalavu Kalladhu Ulagalavu Tamil proverb as the title of the book. And the publisher said, we sell chapters separately. If you use the title in Tamil, people may not buy it. Can you see the point? That is, they won't know what this chapter is about. So I told them the chapter is important in Tamil because I want the reader to go into the chapter and figure out the Tamil. So this is my ideology about reading, writing is changing. It's not about my responsibility as a writer, it's also about your responsibility as a reader. You have to make an effort to understand me. It's not one-sided. So all these uses are to help or motivate readers to engage with the text and unpack it rather than me opening it up. So of course this is also a book which is easier to publish, but I didn't copy examples from published articles now, refereed articles, where I am using Tamil in Tamil script, but writing it in a way people can guess the meaning. So I call all these practices code meshing, in the sense that you are bringing 2 codes into the same text. There's a history behind it, the word code meshing. An African-American scholar, Vershawn Young, he said, this is a completely metaphorical use of the term code switching. He said, code switching makes it appear I have to talk black English at home and standard English in the university or school. Or some people call it, actually, it's not even code switching, it's code segregating. All codes are nice, we'll have them, but keep them for different places. Sri Lankan English for home, standard British American or British or American English for your essays. I'll teach you essay class in Sri Lankan English, but when you write, don't use that English. It'll be marked wrong. Can you see the hypocrisy? So this writer said, I don't want to segregate my codes, I want to bring them into the academy. So that's why he said code meshing. You know, it's not code switching or segregating. I want to be all of myself in my writing. So it's a very meaningful term, but as I told you, it's been with us from 14th century in that Sanskrit and Tamil mixing that we have did. So I'll finish with some of the criticisms about this. The first three criticisms I've already dealt with. That is, this won't be allowed because the industry is not ready. But I gave you more than enough examples. It's happening. But I'll focus on the fourth criticism. Some people have said such texts are linguistically idiosyncratic and don't amount to much. Every writer from every language using something from their language or culture. What does it do? One person uses cultural borrowing, like vadai in Tamil. Another person uses a proverb, like one person uses a Sri Lankanism, like ing. But these are small changes, but you can see it's also disturbing for the publishing, because from my experience, reviewers, copy editors don't want to let that happen. And scholars who say there's only one type of English possible. So these are small openings. It's, I would say, disturbing the norms, disturbing the industry to create possible changes. So the other criticism, these are, a lot of people say you can publish this, but it'll happen only in chapters, creative writing. Of course, creative writing, it has happened for centuries, a lot of post-colonial writers, but not in refereed essays. So read my more recent essays and read Geneva Smitherman. She has published it in academic refereed essays. But I should pause here. The changes I showed you from 3 different times are influenced by multiple scales of change that are happening. One is, I have been changing in my seniority. So I can take more risks now, right? So I'm taking more risks now because I don't care if it doesn't get published. Secondly, through the different ages, 2002 to 2006 to 2025, the academic culture is changing. There's a little more openness to diversity and voice. And thirdly, the fact that many of us are doing this, like Geneva Smitherman, myself, and then there are a lot of others who are doing this, African American scholars, indigenous scholars, it's preparing the readership. People are getting ready to say, okay, this doesn't mean Geneva Smitherman doesn't know English. This doesn't mean Suresh Kanagaraja knows only Tamil. There's something else going on. People are prepared to look at it that way. So there are multiple things that are happening to make this possible, and therefore these small changes are gradually leading to broader changes. Small changes make big differences, right? And another criticism is a lot of people claim too much for voice and diversity, but there's not a lot. Just one word. What is that? So it's true, but once again, we have to say deviating from the norm, creativity is contextual. You can't do the same thing everywhere. So if I was writing, I'll give you an example from Geneva Smitherman. She once wrote an essay for TESOL Quarterly, which is our own second language journal about Black English. She didn't code mesh a lot. I think she thought these are people who are not used to African American English. They are very international readership. I have to be a little more cautious with these people. She used 2 cultural borrowings in 2 places, in the title in a very specific way, because she was very careful not to push it too far. Can you see how we have to assess how much diversity a particular genre or audience are ready for and make the diversity? If you were to write one way everywhere, you are a bad writer. We have to be very diverse, very creative in our writing to figure out what kind of change is possible. So these critics, when they say this, they want a uniform writing practice for any writing that claims to be decolonial or with voice. This is another set of problems. Some people say some of the things we see are not really creative much. So for example, they would say, even when the deviations are not very obvious, the problem with the use of ing a lot is that it might look stereotypical and sarcastic. So you have to be careful. It might look like a parody. So sometimes the changes are very subtle, but then for a lot of readers, there's no change. But so here's a problem with ideological misrecognition, as we call it, that is, we don't see the change because we think at a very macro level, this is just standard English. Sometimes you have to read carefully, or maybe read with your heart and imagination in mind to see there's something else going on here. So sometimes they don't see the change. On the other hand, some people feel, once again, it's an earlier criticism, these changes are too small and variable. They are not going to change the system. But I would say the smaller changes will lead to opening up spaces, preparing readers to see more, to embrace more changes. I'll stop with this final point. For some people, and this is the best testament to the value of code meshing, some people say, especially scholars in second language writing, this kind of writing ignores the norms and therefore you're going to be punished. There are another set of scholars who say, there's nothing new here, you're still writing in standard English. So this is another problem of you're unable to chewing gum and walk at the same, there are two things happening at the same time. It's a paradox, and lot more writers are doing that. But the fact that people see only one half of the picture is a testament there's something more complex going on, a third possibility that they are not acknowledging. So I'll make a couple of comments about how this is not only about decolonizing English, but any language change. And it's happening all the time, from time immemorial. So one is, already from the examples we have seen, language change is multiscalar and multidimensional. So as I mentioned, the changes I did in my writing happened at different levels. Before it happened in academic refereed articles, it happened in autoethnographies, book chapters, etc. And you need multiple changes to happen. So the fact, what allowed me to make the changes, but changes also in the academic discourse and academic culture. People were becoming more open to diversity. I couldn't have done this when I was a graduate student in 1985, for example. Too much at risk. I'm not known. The academic community is not ready. That period was not ready for that kind of change. So there are multiple things that work together. And that's the reason why even democratizing academic writing or decolonizing English is a wicked problem. That's very humbling. The change is not going to be one day on a surprising day when everything, we have a new world, a new earth. But let me say how language change works. This is from interactional social linguistics. And why this is so powerful is even gibberish can become a word. So interactional social linguistics, I love it because it starts from there. We call it indexicality. How does a sound or a lect, something you see, become meaningful? So how does a non-word become a word? If I can prove you that, then you would use your Tamil or Sinhala or Hindi, because it is already meaningful, right? So let me tell you. Let me take an example. This is by Colbert. You have heard the Colbert Report, who in the United States, he does a talk show. He coined the word in 2005, truthiness. Stephen Colbert is his name, truthiness. Truthiness is ungrammatical. Truthfulness is grammatical. Truth is grammatical. Truthiness is ungrammatical. But he used it very strategically. He negotiated its use. At the end of 2005, 3 linguistic societies judged this as the best new word in the English language. How did that change? An ungrammatical word became not only grammatical, but won prizes. So first of all, he used it, if you looked at his talk show, I've analyzed it very closely. He used it strategically with a lot of multimodal and other contextual resources to help people guess the meaning. So what he meant by truthiness is American people have a penchant for being drawn to consider something truth by the feel of it, not because it's factual. It feels like it's true, because President Trump said that. All the news media said it feels like Saddam Hussein would do that. I believe it. It feels like Iran would do that. They are subservient. They are just losers. They are powerless. They want peace all the time. Feels like it's true. We all believe it. So truthiness had a special meaning. He didn't define it directly, but it's evident from the context where he is using it in a very careful way. So there has to be a social uptake. That's a social. We understood the meaning. If we didn't understand it, it'll be gibberish. It'll remain gibberish. We understood it. He gave it meaning. Second thing is, as people started using it And now I've seen so many places people are using the word truthiness. So I was driving by a church in my town a few years ago, and they usually post the title of the sermon for that Sunday outside, and the title for that Sunday was Truthiness and Consequences. They were playing on truth and consequences, but it's a nice switch. They're using truthiness in a serious context. So historical sedimentation is how that word gets used over time. It acquires more meaning, more context, more history, and therefore it becomes more meaningful. Ideological meta-pragmatics is when people comment on the word and say, so there have been articles later, also the prizes of the dictionary societies, who said this word is the best new word. It's ideological because it's changing the value of that word. It's changing your opinion of the word. So might I say, the conversation we are having now on the possibility of violating standard English or deviating from standard English for voice as a way of decolonizing English is an ideological meta-pragmatic undertaking right now. So meta-pragmatics is talk about talk. So right now we are doing that, right? We are talking about a way of writing, and that talk gives it a lot more value, justification, credence, beauty, appropriateness. And for any language change that has happened, one of the longest essays in refereed articles is by Asif Aga, linguist in UPenn. It's about how standard English became standard English. And he traces about 500 years of history, how a particular dialect, London English, in a context where there were so many other varieties, became standardized. And it took all these efforts. And more important, he was looking at the meta-pragmatics. People saying good things about London way of speaking. The more and more that happens, more and more handbooks are printed with that variety of speech. More and more speech trainers, elocution trainers, train people who enunciate words in a particular way. It becomes standard. Can you see how language change is also ideological? People have to sway your minds and opinions. But the last thing is this. A collection of words becomes enregistered, meaning it begins to identify some people or an activity as typical of that activity. So it starts from all the way how certain ways of talking, people might say, that's the Jaffna man talk. Or certain ways of talking, people would say, that's the Jewish Brooklynese people talk. Who told them that? It's a kind of an identification that begins. They didn't talk with that assumption, but people begin to recognize. So this is where I want to end, is that kind of writing becoming enregistered. More and more people are talking, more and more people doing, and we are doing a meta-pragmatic event, and it's one of many where people are explaining how different types of writing, different type of publishing are happening, right? So it's becoming a thing. Code meshing as a word, which is also a nice development. It's not an unknown thing. People are writing about it. If you Google it, you might find books about it. But let me conclude by saying this is only one small effort from the ground up that is within our reach. As teachers, we can do something, both in our writing and with our students. But don't ignore all the big things that are happening with our wonderful colleagues in policy and ideology who are writing more articles about this, who are making more and more people informed about the inequalities in publishing. We need changes at the policy level in publishing and journals, but they might be sped up by our own efforts to push this in their face and say, what do you do about this? If somebody writes this like this, a wonderful article with some difference. Thank you. Okay, we're late for tea. Good.
Thank you, Professor Suresh Kanagaraja, for that thought-provoking keynote lecture. Your insight on tools, agency, and transformation have given us much to reflect as we begin this conference. Thank you once again. Now it's time to honor the keynote speaker, Professor Suresh Kanagaraja. May I respectfully invite our co-chairs, Professor N. Pradibaraja, the Dean, Faculty of Arts, and Professor T. Kanragaran, Head of the Department, to felicitate our keynote speaker with a token of appreciation. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now reached the closing of our inaugural session. I invite Ms. Riofila Lakshan, Secretary of the Conference, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good morning. It's my great privilege and pleasure to propose the vote of thanks at the second International Conference on Decolonizing English. First and foremost, I wish to express our deepest gratitude to Professor Suresh Kanagaraja. Sir, your presence and invaluable keynote address have been one of the greatest highlights of this conference. We are especially grateful for your generous sponsorship through Evan Pugh University Professorship. Your support has contributed immensely to making this conference possible. Thank you, Professor, for believing in this initiative and for being an integral part of ICDE 2026. We extend our heartfelt thanks to all our distinguished plenary speakers who have joined us from different countries to share their knowledge. Your presence has truly given this conference an international character. Our sincere appreciation goes to our panelists and moderator who agreed to have an engaging panel discussion that will be tomorrow. We are deeply grateful to our conference chair and vice chancellor, Senior Professor T. Velnambi, for his continued support. His support has been invaluable throughout the organization of this conference. Our sincere thanks also go to our co-chair and dean, Professor N. Pradibaraja, for his guidance and commitment throughout the conference preparations. I would also like to express our appreciation to our Deputy Registrar for her tremendous support in making resources and facilities available whenever needed. We are also grateful to the Assistant Registrar Hindu Studies and the Assistant Registrar Graduate Studies for providing resources required for the successful conduct of this conference. We thank the Technical Officer, Faculty of Arts for his assistance, including the procurement of quotations and the many administrative arrangements that supported the conference. Our heartfelt thanks go to all the heads of the department who generously provided venues, adjusted lecture halls, and made academic spaces available to us. Our appreciation also goes to the Bursar and the Finance branch for handling the financial arrangements and accounts associated with the conference. A special word of thanks goes to our printers, Guru Printers, Dear Emma Printers, and Fine Graphics for working with us to produce the conference materials within the required timeline. Our sincere appreciation goes to our car page designers who contributed to the design of the proceedings. Our sincere thanks go to the VC Media team for their coverage and live streaming support, which enabled our sessions to reach an even wider audience. We are deeply grateful to our reviewers, session chairs, and session coordinators who generously agreed to serve in these roles. Your academic commitment and willingness to give your time have been essential to maintaining the quality and smooth flow of the conference. Our heartfelt thanks go to the university librarian and staff for their support for the proceedings and venue. We also acknowledge with gratitude the support extended by the Department of Maintenance and their staff. A very special thank you goes to our student volunteers. Your enthusiasm, patience, and willingness to help have been invaluable. We extend our special thanks to the Art Student Union President and the students for their support and involvement. We thank our ELT students who contribute to the welcome performance. Our sincere appreciation goes to the technical assistance of the Dean's Office and the Department of IT for their technical support throughout their conference. We also thank the Department of Media for providing with us the materials needed. Our sincere thanks go to the team responsible for sound and lighting of the auditorium. I wish to express my deepest appreciation to our advisory, editorial, and action committee members, to all the members who worked tirelessly from the initial planning stages to the final moments of the conference. Our heartfelt thanks also go to the presenters and participants who traveled from different places and joined us in this important academic conversation. Your presence and engagement have given life and meaning to the theme of the conference. Finally, I would like to thank each and every one of you for being part of the ICDE 2026 journey. We hope that the conversations we have initiated here will continue beyond this conference through new research, collaborations, publications, and most importantly, through meaningful changes in the way we think about and teach English. As we conclude, may ICDE 2026 be the beginning of many new conversations and collaborations. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. I delighted to announce that the Spotlight Session 1 with the decolonial focus will commence within few minutes. I request the Spotlight presenters come near to the stage with your presentation slides. Thank you all for your cooperation in making this inaugural session a success. We wish you a fruitful and inspiring conference experience. Thank you.